I thought I would share one of the last writings I wrote about my mom 3 years ago. Today, there was the end of really an era in my family. My family is recycling dates, it seems like. So 3 years ago, on my youngest daughter's birthday, my grandmother passed away, the matriarch of the family. But she had been declining with dementia and Alzheimer's for several years before her death. And so in function, my mother took the role as the matriarch of the family, and just days after my grandmother's passing, on April 8th, 3 years ago, my mother passed away. It was almost a week after we left from California to participate in the memorial for my grandmother. And by the time we all made it home a week later, my mother passed away. And then we had the funeral on my older daughter's birthday. So it's like these dates seem to keep recycling. And I was kind of chuckling this morning because one of the, I guess just, quirky things about my mother is my mother was a diehard Jerry Curl lady to the end, but she would only get her hair done. She was like, I only need to get it done once every 6 months. It's probably why I have issues about my hair. But my mother's Jerry Curl always looked like an afro. And a year ago, about this time of year, the locks I had had for 7 years, I didn't want to cut them, so I meticulously picked out 114 locks and undid them. But I don't really know how to do my hair, and I don't really like putting a whole lot of attention and energy into it. And the easiest thing I can do is either put it in braids or pick it out. And I realized that, this is the equivalent to my mother's Afro Jerry Curl. So I must be Sable Hughes' daughter too. And I thought I would share on the anniversary of her passing, realizing that she meant a lot to a lot of people in a lot of different ways. My mother was very active in the community and in her church. And a lot of people I know, or I believe, were touched and influenced by her life in some way. While she was professionally nursing, she worked at the jail and she worked at juvenile hall for many years. And I know there were people that would have crossed her path that she may have had a meaningful impact. And then she moved careers and worked at the community colleges, retiring again from Napa Community College. And throughout that interaction, many of the students and perhaps co-workers and peers that she would have been involved in. And I know that she probably had a meaningful impact on many of their lives. And then she was involved in the church. Many of the years, from my teenage years up, she was involved with the Fairfield Community Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I know gave in a lot of ways there and had a meaningful impact. And like many families, we got issues, we got stuff. And relationship stuff has been an issue in my family as well. But the last piece of work that I wrote really about her, I finished writing the morning of her funeral. Really checking myself to make sure that if I was given the opportunity to speak, that it was something that was not only in love, but also true. That being true to yourself, but being true to the true self, the loving self. And so I thought it appropriate to be able to really share some of the closing lessons that my mother provided for me. This piece, when I think about it, and I finished it as a writer and an author, but really I'm just a writer. I write down things that I think about or lessons that I learn or things that I may want to remind myself of or share with others. One of those pieces that I'm most proud of, one of the pieces that I feel is most honest. And so I'll share that with you today. And perhaps you too get something out of the lessons that I learned. And I called this piece an unsolicited eulogy. And I'm reading it. So, throughout the process of grieving for first my grandmother and soon thereafter my mother, one of the songs I played over and over was Denise Williams and some others singing Black Butterfly. The one phrase that stuck out to me was, "Tell your sons and daughters what the struggle brings. Freedom is what the struggle brings." I am part of a family like many others. We got issues. In a recent conversation with one of my family members, the conversation went something like this. My family member said, "But I never thought our family would be like this, like those families." Me. Like which families? My family member said, like those families on TV. And I said, like reality TV? And my family member said, yeah, we are them. And I said, yep, they are us. So is usually how you start a story that really is the middle of a much bigger episode, but you've got to start somewhere, and so is usually that start. I prepared words to speak at my mother's funeral, but I was not given the opportunity to speak at her funeral. The words are worth sharing as a reminder, more to me than anyone else, of what my struggle has brought for me: the freedom to choose love. If I were standing at my mother's funeral in California overlooking her closed casket and the beautiful flowers draped over its cover, I would have said, when I received the call of my mother's death, it was the closing of an era in my life of being parented by my mother and the father that I was given. Not the orphan in a traditional sense, but the closing of that generation in my human experience. What's left? As in death, the impact lingers. My mother, as a donor, will live on in other ways in the physical. The lessons learned and gleaned will live on also in me. We hear about the story of the dash, the space we occupy between birth and death. But more pronounced for me are the final lessons left me by both parents. They are more pronounced as they now sit as bookends to my life of being parented. I want to take a moment to share a highlight of what that means to me, as they are lessons on how to live. The parting lessons from my father were hard, but they often felt good. He taught me, 1, if I wake up, it's on purpose. Figure out why. 2, live life fully today, in real time, literally. 3, be at peace with God. 4, do my part to be at peace with everyone, with the reminder you can't choose for them to be at peace with me, but still do my part to be at peace. 5, if I wake up tomorrow, do it again. 6, if I don't wake up tomorrow, I will have completed my mission with no regrets. Powerful lessons that I got to learn in the midst of a fabulous plane ride and motorcycle rides. My father completed his assignment as my father, and then he was out. I needed those lessons to go through the next chapter, 14 years up to my mother's death. My mother also left me with a parting lesson to enter my next chapter. This lesson made my father's lessons much harder to live. My mother and I had a strained relationship. That's the nice way of saying in public what is a funeral taboo of, my mother was not perfect and neither am I, and our relationship was painful more often than pleasurable. But those relationships that we all have somewhere in our lives are equally important and just as valuable. My mother helped me to make sure that I had learned a recent lesson in love and freedom. What lesson, you may wonder? Simply put, real freedom, and freedom that I strive to achieve, is the freedom to love, to choose to love. Not just the love we give when it feels good, but love without defenses up to those who have hurt us and who likely will hurt us again. In the recent passing of my grandmother, I was here in California after it being a long time, years since I'd been here. I had the opportunity to come back and see my mother with my defenses up, prepared to protect myself, and then I was faced with a choice. I could choose to use all the tools in the arsenal toolbox of my ego. Tools over the years living in a traumatizing world that I had sharpened. Instead, against my ego's better judgment, I came having decided that those tools I didn't want to transport here from the life I have created in South Carolina. I would not be that kind of bag lady on that trip. And instead, I decided to try freedom. It was much heavier than the other tools in my toolbox. I believed it, but can I live it, especially when it's hard? Knowing our encounter might hurt, can I come in love without judgment or defense? My last private encounter face to face was my test. Can I live it? It's not about judgment, Mom. It's about freedom. Freedom to love. I had a conversation 2 days later with a dear friend who said, be grateful. Be grateful you could see your mother and know you chose love, and know you chose love when you could have chosen otherwise. That's the freedom you were talking about. He said, you never know if it'll be your last opportunity. A week after that conversation with my mother, she was dead. That was, in fact, the last opportunity, and for that I am grateful. Her last job as my mother was to be the proctor of my last parenting exam. It was a comprehensive exam for my life's master class. Can you put these lessons together and live them? I woke up that day. Check. It was on purpose. Check. Figure out why. To have a heart talk with my mom. Check. Do what you can to be at peace with your mom. Check. Do it in love with the fences down. Check. My mother had to be exactly who she was to fulfill her role as my mother. When I set aside the knowledge of good and evil, right or wrong, she simply was. She was my mother. She was Sable, Dean, Howard, Hughes, and she played her role to the end. God in the universe gave me these parents and these lessons for the role I play in the world and into this next chapter. What was her role in your life? Our ultimate freedom and hopefully your quest of your spiritual and healing journey is to mature and heal so that no matter how others interact with us, we choose love. For people of faith, especially of the Christian tradition my mother embraced, you are offered the gift of freedom and liberty. Hear me today, that freedom includes the freedom to choose love. But they might hurt me. Yes, but I get to choose who I am, and I choose love. I choose light. Through my test, I can now credit my mother with having taught me that true freedom is the freedom to love. I hope she tasted that freedom even in her final days, and if she didn't, I'm sure that after April 8th, her passing, whether it happened in that instant or if it is the next thing she will know according to her faith beliefs, she too now had complete freedom. Thank you for your patience and for allowing me to share. This was written in memorial of my mother, Sable Dean Howard Hughes. She was born on May 9th, 1945, and she passed away on the 8th of April, 2021.